All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really incredible story of innovation that takes on huge global problems like waste and food security. And believe it or not, it all starts in a school cafeteria with a solution that's, well, let's just say it's a little bit wriggly. I mean, think about that question for a second. It sounds almost too simple, too good to be true, doesn't it? We're so used to seeing leftovers as just trash, something you throw out. But this whole project forces us to stop and ask, what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if that waste is actually the key to something way bigger? And that's exactly the discovery a group in Turkey made. They realized the solution to these massive challenges wasn't some complex machine or a super expensive new technology. Nope. It was something alive, something organic, and yeah, something pretty wriggly. So let's get into how they pulled it off. Okay, so before we even get to the worms and the chickens, we have to start with the most important part of this entire story, a huge shift in how they thought about the problem. It all really boils down to this one simple idea. On one side, you have the old way of thinking. Organic waste is çöp. That's the Turkish word for trash. It's useless. But the innovators behind this project asked a totally different question. What if it's not trash at all, but a valuable raw material? Honestly, that single change in perspective is what made everything else possible. You know, this kind of thinking didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was actually part of a bigger educational philosophy they have called açık okulaşma, or open schooling. The whole concept is just beautiful, really. It says that learning shouldn't be stuck inside the four walls of a classroom. It should spill out into the real world, bringing everyone, students, teachers, parents, even local businesses, together to solve actual problems. And they didn't just talk about it. They put that philosophy straight into practice. The school basically stopped being just a place for lessons and completely transformed into a living, breathing laboratory. So what did that actually look like day to day? Well, it was pure hands-on science. The students would collect the food waste right from their own school kitchen. That became the fuel for the whole experiment. Then their job was to be the scientists, observing these mealworms in glass enclosures, carefully documenting their growth and behavior on data forms. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. They were creating weekly reports, turning cafeteria leftovers into a legitimate scientific study. By watching so closely, students got this amazing front row seat to the mealworm's entire life cycle. They saw the larva, which is the main eating machine, then they saw it transform into the dormant pupa, and finally emerge as an adult beetle. I mean, they weren't just reading about biology in a textbook. They were literally witnessing the engine that powered their entire project. And that's really the crucial point here. This was so much more than biology homework. The students were learning the real discipline of what it means to be a scientist. You know, the careful observation, the systematic data collection, and maybe most importantly, the patience you need to see a long-term project all the way through. But the project was never meant to just stay in the school lab. The real goal was to connect this entire cycle back to the community. And this is the moment where the experiment moves out into the real world, where waste truly starts to become wonder. And here's that open schooling idea in action. The mealworms, which were now full and healthy from all that school waste, were passed along to key community partners, another agricultural high school and a local chicken farmer named Behise Hanım. Together, they had one critical question to answer. Could these mealworms actually be a good, high-protein feed for her chickens? So what happened? Well, after feeding chickens the mealworm diet, they did an initial lab analysis on the eggs, and the results were really promising. Now, it's super important to note this was a limited, small-scale test. But even so, it showed a measurable increase in the protein content of the eggs. This was the first real concrete sign that their whole circular system could actually improve the final product. When you have a success story like this, you can't just keep it to yourself, right? The team knew they had to do more than just run the experiment. They needed to create resources so that anyone, anywhere could learn from what they'd done. And the educational tools they came up with were fantastic. For the younger kids, they made a custom workbook with fun activities to explain life cycles and sustainability. And for everyone else, they produced an AI-supported audio series. How cool is that? It became this interactive place where students could share what they found and parents and experts could jump into the conversation. It was the perfect way to keep the entire community involved. So when you put it all together, the science, the community partners, the educational outreach, what is the real, lasting impact of the Mealworm Project? It wasn't just one thing. It was this amazing ripple effect. The biggest change was that fundamental mindset shift. School waste wasn't trash anymore. It was a resource. That change helps them build powerful new partnerships with local producers. It also created a super low-cost, scalable model that other schools could easily adopt. But maybe the most lasting impact was on the students themselves. They learned a huge lesson about being responsible for our environment and built a community project that's designed to last. At the end of the day, this project is just such a powerful reminder that game-changing ideas don't always come from fancy labs or big corporations. Sometimes they start with a simple question in a school with a few people who are just willing to look at an old problem in a completely new way. Which kind of leaves all of us with a final question to chew on. It really makes you wonder, what waste is lying around in your own community, at your school, your job, in your neighborhood? That's just an opportunity in disguise. What problem is sitting right in front of you, just waiting for a new perspective to turn it into something wonderful? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.